Oh,
Hey,
there she is.
hey, Jack.
Hey,
Is Mark here? I don't see him yet.
now did you hear from him?
Yeah, I think he was waiting for an invite,
Oh,
but he probably should.
So maybe send it to him, Joe.
tell me his last name again, Jack.
Schroeder. It was the third person in that list.
I did a poor fast reading of your
Poor close reading
form.
skills, Joe. Poor close reading skills.
Let's see.
He's ready to come in, I could tell you.
Okay. So he is invited also. And I'll also forward him an email with the link just for a little redundancy's sake.
There he is.
Here I am.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
So I'm Joe, and I'll be leading this fabulous session to some degree. And I think it'd be great to introduce really quickly. I'm Joe, and I'm from the Denver Writing Project. And let's see, Jack, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jack Zangerle. I'm from the Hudson Valley Writing Project, and I teach 8th grade English. Bonnie.
I'm Bonnie Kaplan from the Hudson Valley Writing Project. I used to teach a lot of 8th grade English, and now I teach 8th grade teachers. I don't teach them, I just work with them.
I'm Mark Schroeder, and I'm with the Hudson Valley Writing Project, and I teach ESL to 6th through 8th grade students.
Awesome.
I'm Mallory McNeil. I am working on CL MOOC this summer with the Philadelphia. Well, located in Philadelphia. We're in the National Writing Project office there. I teach middle school writing. So, and I'm in charge of making sure we're doing all the protocol and on time for this. So that's my job.
And I'm Karen, and it's nice to see you all. I'm with Borderlands Writing Project and doing some facilitation on CL MOOC this summer and doing a lot of work with the Make Bank.
Yeah, and so I know Karen and Mallory both had a chance to look through the form that you completed. I think Jack probably completed it, right?
I did.
So we've got sort of a basic idea of what the plan is for your week. And the goal of this meeting is really to give you some very quick kind of rapid prototyping type feedback on your idea. So the first thing I put in the chat is this protocol. And if you would just take a peek at that, if everyone can access it. So I'll do the introductory part, and then Mallory will lead us through the bottom part. And the goal at the bottom is really the idea that you'll talk through your plan very quickly, so we have sort of a cursory idea of what you're thinking, and then we try to respond with all the ways we might participate. And so it's really to take the approach that we could ask you to talk at length about your plan, and then we could give you sort of like well-measured feedback, but instead we want to generate a lot of ideas for you. And so hopefully you'll have a lot to think about and to inform your planning. And even if we have sort of rough ideas of your plan, I think that's okay. And if, with that said, also if you feel like you need support between now and the start of your week, which is about 10 days away, there's always opportunities for us to slow down, give you more clear feedback or more clear support. But this has felt pretty supportive for folks in the first 5 weeks. Okay.
Sounds good.
So really quickly before I hand over the protocol part to Mallory, I'm just going to kind of intro this with these talking points at the top. So the first thing I want to share is the Terry and Kevin story. So one of the reasons I'm leaving this is because I helped facilitate the MOOC last year, and as much of an experiment to CL MOOC it always is every week and maybe even every day, it was really kind of an experiment last year. We had a lot of best laid plans, but we were never quite sure what was actually going to happen when we pushed things out to folks. And so Terry and Kevin were the brave soldiers who led week 1 in the first year, and they had this plan that everyone was going to use podcasts to introduce themselves, and they really opened it up to all types of introductions, but they really envisioned themselves supporting people making podcasts and sort of this rich exchange of podcast introductions. Well, it turned out that by the end of the week, everyone was feeling like it was wildly successful in terms of an introductory week and great community interaction. Like Terry and Kevin said, they think only one person made a podcast. And so that's just to say that I think that can happen at any point, right? That we're pushing this out to a community that is like, depending on which analytics you're looking at, can be 1,000 people to 1,500 people, and they might be like half reading your newsletter that you send out. And so the idea that there's some very real mushiness to this. And so it's to kind of lower your anxiety, but also to prepare you that you might push something out that's a really tangible, like, accessible idea, and then people might do something that really looks like a tangent. And then you might see a support team telling them, that's great. So just to sort of set your expectation that if the community starts to take something in one direction or another, we kind of go with the flow. So hopefully that lowers the pressure, but also sort of sets your expectation. The second talking point for me is this expression we came up with, because before we'd launch it, any week in the MOOC, with a team of 7 last year, there would always be a few people that said, oh, I think we might rethink this, or I'm not quite sure about this part. Well, we'd never reach like true 100% consensus. Instead, we'd just say, oh yeah, well, you're probably not going to break the MOOC, so let's just give it a try. And so we always just kind of say that these are experiments, and if the community didn't respond to something, to us that's really interesting. And they will be interacting and they will be talking. So in our minds, there's no failure. It's the idea that we're pushing things out there just to see what happens, so you can't break the MOOC. So if you ever feel like, oh no, is this plan good enough? It's like, let's hope it's not. Let's hope we break the MOOC, because that would be interesting. So that's to lower your anxiety, and also to say that there's no pressure on you, other than to get out of this the learning that you hope to gain. And then the part of this coaching session is, again, the idea that we're trying to ask you to rapidly present your plan, and also we're trying to give you rapid feedback from different user perspectives. So first we'll be saying, okay, if we're participants, here's what we might do with this idea. And then in the second half of the protocol, we'll say, okay, if you guys left town and we had to facilitate your week in such a way that worked for us, here's how we might approach it. And that's just to give you data to inform your planning between now and the start of your week. So that's the whole basis of the protocol. And those are my talking points. And now I'll hand it over to Mallory.
Awesome. So we're just going to take 5 minutes right now to hear from the Hudson Valley writing team and our Make Cycle leaders about what you envision participants doing in the week of your make. What do you want participants to be doing? What would you like to see happening?
Jack, are you talking?
Yeah, I'll start talking, and Bonnie, Mark, you can just sort of chime in and redirect as necessary, I guess. So something that we spent a lot of time working with is this idea of a 5-image story, and it's something that we've used in a lot of different contexts, in a lot of different places, and a lot of different kinds of work. And have actually used it to grow different ideas from, too. So it's sort of, I was really interested in one of the questions in the forum said, that you guys sent, that if somebody wanted to spend 20 minutes on this, what would it look like? And if somebody wanted to spend 20 hours, what would it look like? And I think that sort of using that lens, there's definitely a way to do that. And I think that, you know, the extent to which people choose to take that could be interesting. So at its simplest, and maybe I'll just use that as the way to talk through it, it's what it means to tell a 5-image story, sort of some exploration of the idea of what that means in terms of literacy and digital literacies and reading and writing and composition and 21st century skills and whatever other jargon you want to throw at it, and then have people sort of give that a try. Because, I mean, definitely one of the things we found with kids and teachers is that when you actually stop and do it, it really does sort of work people through an interesting composition framework mentally, and then the actual act of doing it.
I think, too, we did it in a variety of different ways. First of all, we stole I think maybe Kevin had done it at one point, and it was on the web with somebody else. And when Jack and I started looking at the examples that were up there, a lot of them were cool, but they were not appropriate most of the time for kids. I mean, kids in school. Maybe kids out of school was totally appropriate, but kids in school. So we spent a while trying to figure out how to do it ourselves. We had teachers working on it at Jack's school. We had the kids working on it. Then we took it out, and another tech person from another school used it with her grad students and took it in a much more literacy-based sort of lesson plan kind of way. So we have a lot of different examples of the 5-image story. But what's cool about it is, and from my experience on with Kevin and the iAnthology, is often when you ask people to use images, they don't want to use images. I mean, there's a lot of pushback. Some people do. It's like podcasts, you know. Some people are really comfortable with podcasts. Some people, like I don't do a lot of I love the idea of it, but I don't end up doing it. But the sort of cool thing about it, and I've noticed it, in fact, I grabbed onto some of the possible ways you could do it, even in the first week of the MOOC. I found, I had this great app that you could do text. You could either do 5 images alone, you could do 5 images with a title, you could do 5 images with subtitles underneath it. So there's a variety of different ways to approach this. I think it was fun. I mean, I think it was fun for us. And there's, it's not that there was a lot of stuff that we found initially, but over time we can share a bunch of examples now, I think. Right, Jack? It's hard. It's a little bit more challenging than you think it's going to be. But it's a fun way to share with the community. One of the ways that we started breaking into this and putting it together in a workshop is we would provide the images all mushed up and then let people create their own stories based on those images, putting them in a variety of different ways. But everybody was using the same 5 images, so it was cool to see how everybody took it. We had them, often we had them working in groups. They would put in a title and then create the text along with the images. So,
I mean, and one of the things, I don't know how academic we want to make the connections. And maybe that's sort of a question for you guys. How closely do we want to get back to assessment and standards and things of that nature? And I think we've done a lot of work with that and probably have some of that to work from. But just from what Bonnie said with the organizing the pictures and whatnot, there's some interesting, for what they're worth, I guess, examples from the park assessment people that are sort of doing very, very similar things to that on what will eventually be an ELA assessment. So, I don't know, like I said, how much we want to get into testing and standards and whatnot, if that's too icky for the summer or whatnot. But I don't know, that could be a connection too.
Well, that might be a good transition then into hearing a bit from the coaching team about what they might do as participants in this make cycle.
Karen, you or me first? Oh, and you're me. Okay. So, or you're muted, Karen.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. So, a couple things that jump out at me. Number one, I think the fact that you've done work on this at your site and you've thought about student work and you've done the work with adults will really intrigue the community. So the tangible nature of tell a story with 5 images is like super accessible, and I'm thinking about the person who reads the newsletter super fast to like glean what we might be doing in the MOOC and then run off and do it. They can access that immediately, and they will be interested in sort of your learning and your work at the site. So I think that's a great hook. The other thing that jumps out at me from what you said is, Jack, when you were talking about it as a composition process, or and something that you can reflect on, it's harder than you think. I think that's the. I would also think that. See, now I'm doing the wrong part of the protocol. I'm doing the facilitator part. I guess what I would be thinking about as a participant is I want to I would want to test that. Is it hard and what does it feel like, right? The idea that what are all the ways I can tell stories with five images. Another thing, I might want to push on the notion of 5. I might want to push on the notion of 5. Like, what's special about 5? Can I, if I'm gonna spend a few minutes a day, maybe I'm telling a 2-image story and a 10-image story, or I might go on a hike and take 100 pictures and then try to take 20 to tell the story of the hike. And I might just be thinking about I guess if I'm interacting that way, maybe I'm wrapping my head around images to tell a story. And so I would want the flexibility to be able to be doing things informally, quickly, to either get audience feedback or community interaction. And I would also love to see examples and love to read about what you're finding in terms of the work you've done. And then the last thing I'll say is I would also think as a participant it would be great to encounter the information about park assessments, etc., inside the community during the week. So I wouldn't want to feel like I had to study the park assessment as part of the make cycle. At the same time, if there was a blog post or information about that or a conversation thread that rose up in the week, that would capture my attention. What about you, Karen?
So thinking as a participant of what I would make, I guess the first thought I have is the content of the story that I would be telling, and I'm food obsessed, so I can think of all kinds of food things I would do with this. And then I think the second level I would think about is what kind of images. So the first thing I think of is taking my own images. I have 500 food images on Flickr that I would immediately go to and then sort of find a story from that. But then I think about going to other people's open licensed images, and then I guess the final one is just actually taking images to tell a story. And then that makes me think about sort of what comes first, the story or the images, because I've seen sites where they have, here's 5 images, make a story out of it. But I think, the other approach is think of a story and then find the images, either find the images that tell that story or make the images that tell that story. And I like that all those things are just layers and different ways you could look at it. I think I might take a theme like food or maybe something memoir-ish, and do it different ways and see what that feels like and how the stories come out. And then I guess another layer is just what's the final presentation? Is it just the raw 5 images on a page? Is it a slideshow? Does it have, I would always be thinking of adding music or additional multimedia, and then again that's just more layers. Yeah. I think it's interesting and rich, and I think also the remix possibilities are huge. And I can imagine, like on Monday, people posting, their first thing, and then people just riffing off of each other's stuff, and really a lot. I mean, it's the one thing I like about the sort of 5 and just the simplicity of it is there's enough time in a week to remix and iterate, which is a lot of times where the richness comes out.
Can I talk?
Yeah, so what we can do now is take about 5 minutes for you, the Make Cycle leaders, to talk about what you heard and what impacted your thinking. Go ahead.
So, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking is I think, Karen, it's a very cool idea to consider the images first and then the story first. So it's almost like that's a nice variation for us to even maybe throw out during the week of how to change it up and maybe provide another challenge as the week goes on, so that maybe everybody's on the same page with starting with images first, and the next day maybe changing it to the story first and finding the images, maybe even a reflection on what the two experiences were like, because obviously they're going to be different. I love the idea of how you might take one of the stories that people have created and make it multimedia, add some music to it. I mean, it's short because it's only 5. And I think, Joe, too, I'm thinking about what you said about why 5. The way it's described by, I think not Kelly Gallagher, but he actually even wrote out, like, in the first image it could be this, and the second image, like each image had sort of a role in how you're creating the story. Sort of, very simply, the start, the middle, the end, the climax. It sort of feels like 5 is a very nice number of slides without getting people too crazy, or also, I mean, it isn't that you couldn't tell a story with one image, but sort of maybe everybody being on the same page and seeing how that feels. Like maybe in the experience of 5, somebody needs to add 6, so there's no reason why they couldn't do it. But I know, like with Jack, when the kids would say, well, does it have to be 5? For them, it was really important to provide that kind of structure. Yes, it's 5. What can you do with 5 images? And they did really cool things. Yeah. And we had them doing a variety of different things within those 5 images. They drew on paper, where we got some really cool stories. They just drew on paper, made it simple. They got images off the internet. They created their own images. The more we could mix it up for them and challenge them, continue to challenge them, and then sharing, I think, one of the things also online was how do you, and I don't know exactly how we do it, but it's cool too when you can put a story up and have people within the community commenting on the story, sort of talking about the story, because I think that's also the initial purpose, was in creating a community around how each person sees the story, in how they take it in. I mean, there's a million things you could do with it, and I think the more, I've done it a lot in workshops now with teachers, so it's been a lot of fun to see how they interact with and we bring in given images, because in a workshop you just people can't start like pulling, where are they coming from? And it's cool to see how they create stories together as a group. And it doesn't matter what the images are.
Right. One of the things that makes it a little accessible, too, might even be the idea that what does it look like when you're doing it with a variety of technologies even, and how it could be done all from a mobile device. So it's super lightweight. It's not cumbersome for you to do. You're not gathering equipment and all that. You're literally just taking your phone out of your pocket, and then from there, you're able to do things like some of those apps that Bonnie mentioned. Like those are
like
even
Tapestry. Tapestry is a real easy way to do it.
Hit on some of those that sort of show the amazing, like literally amazing things you can do with what seems like very limited resources, even though I guess they're really not when you really unpack what's in those things. But because I just seeing some of the things that kids do, it's they'll say, I don't want to use it. My favorite quote from this year, this is maybe a little bit of an aside, was, so we had an iPad cart in the room for a while, and normally you have like a laptop cart around and things like that. And the iPads were away one day, and I said, well, we're going to do this thing, and you need the laptops. And this kid flops down and goes, laptops are for old people. Can we please put these things away? And I just, wow, that just spoke volumes. Given the kind of what I wanted them to do that day, in my head, I was like, oh, we need laptops. And I think I'm pretty technology progressive. I felt like this.
You just got a new laptop.
This crotchety old guy who was forcing them to do like this awful thing, and just to, like, and then the things they were able to do with, no, I just want to use my phone. I can do this all from here. It's better and faster. I don't want to use that thing, and they were right. I mean, they were right. So anyway,
take your laptop and you off of it.
Well, and I guess if you have any other thoughts on what Joe or Karen said, go ahead and comment on that. But then also, we want to take a little bit, 5 minutes to talk about, for our Make Cycle leaders, what key points of facilitating, or what are the key points of facilitating or leading this Make Cycle that people should understand.
I don't understand.
Does that make sense? Okay, so for Make Cycle leaders, we just want to hear from you now about what are the key points for facilitating this Make Cycle in your mind. And I think you've been commenting a little bit already on the availability of different technologies and different uses, but anything else to add to that in terms of what are key things that should be understood when facilitating this Make Cycle?
I think it exists, but some sort of outline of the, I guess, requirements, just to make sure we're hitting on all the things. And I'm pretty sure I saw something like that somewhere along the line.
Oh, yeah. So as far as
where that is.
What you're talking about is like, do you have your concrete list of the things you have to do during the week? I'll make sure you agree with all those links. What this question is really getting at is for you to kind of like facilitate this happening the way you want. Like, what are some of those key things to stress, right? Like, for example, one of the points you talked about was it doesn't really matter what the images are. Like, collaboration is more important than the images. I would say that's like a key facilitation point in your mind, right? So what are some of those key facilitation points?
Facilitation for us?
Yeah, like what are you thinking about? Like, you want to convey this idea to this community.
Gotcha.
What are those key things you want to stress?
I think the sort of the idea of communicating and composing with images and the relationship between, traditional composing and writing, and what does the visual literacy add to that, and what's the difference in those two sorts of work. I think that's a really big piece, and like the relationship between the two, and probably how they reinforce and inform each other. And then I guess kind of a little bit about how to approach it and how to do things like this. Because I know if you were to gather a group of 20 teachers in a room and say, we're going to talk about doing this, their first idea out of their mind is, that's impossible. I am not there's not a chance in hell that I'm going to do that with 25, 13-year-olds. No way. Sort of look at that sliding scale of access and what that's going to look like. Because if it seems impossible, it's not even worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I also would wonder, like, what are our responsibilities? What does a week look like? Like, I know, we put, the week starts out, there's a really nice introduction of what the topic is going to look like. There's great links that sort of take you all over the place. You could start putting things up on your blog. You can connect with Google. But how does all that, what do we do in the course of a week?
Yeah. So let me just break into the protocol here really quickly. Let me see here. Let's see. I have that document, so I'll just put it in front of you right now because I know that's an important question.
Yeah.
If you don't answer it, it'll be frustrating for you. So let's see. I'm putting the link in the chat right now and hitting enter. So if you look at that, kind of on page 2 of this, there's page 2 is that table. And I see you guys slowly getting onto this document. So there are basically 4 things, I think. It's that not this Friday, but the Friday following. Next Friday, you'll have a newsletter to submit to Christina at NWP, and then she'll help you through like editing and finalizing. So that's how you launch the whole darn thing. And then Tuesday afternoon, you're hosting Evening for You, so 7 p.m. Eastern. You're hosting a Make With Me hangout. And what that means is you'll basically want to be prepared to like do something hands-on a little bit with images and telling stories. And then we'll also make sure that you have an opportunity to have some participants in that hangout with you. And those 2 things are really the sort of the initial hurdle. Once you're past the Tuesday hangout, then you mostly have that community going, and you're going to feel a little sense of relief, and you're going to say, oh, that wasn't too bad, and look what everyone's doing. And then Thursday afternoon Thursday evening for you is a Twitter chat. And that is really, I mean, it's almost no planning because you really want about 6 questions that are good reflective questions. And you can plan it in about 15 minutes. And then you're just there in a Twitter chat. And then you'll send out this last newsletter. It's due on Friday morning. And it's just prompting them to reflect and highlighting some things you've seen.
Right.
So, and that's a little shorter than the first one, and I'll also make sure you have templates of all those newsletters, so you're not, drafting blind or anything.
So as long as we're breaking the protocol, just listening to you to go through that, Joe, I've been thinking the Make With Me's, they've been really awesome, but we haven't had one that was, I don't think, that's like we're actually making together. And this would be such an awesome one where you could throw up 5 pictures and have everybody jump in a Google Doc and start writing, or you could have people bring pictures, and you could even do that on the Twitter chat and tweet the pictures. I think that would be so dynamic and fun.
I was thinking the same thing. Karen, I was thinking the same thing as Joe was talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cool. I think we had one last year where we got in a Google Doc and we all just started writing something, and it was crazy but fun, and it was really neat at the end. And I think it's just also awesome modeling to go like, you can do this, and it doesn't have to, a webinar doesn't have to be a slideshow and somebody talking, right?
Right. Right, it might be a fun way to also throw out Tapestry too, like I could use an app where you could easily put those pictures up with text. It's a great little app.
Cool. Fun.
It'll be fun.
Well, should we jump back into the protocol, Joe?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, what the heck?
So I guess, and Karen, that actually fits right in with what you just said anyway. So basically, we want to hear just from Joe and Karen about if something happened and they had to facilitate this week, how would they go about doing it, and what are some ways they would approach it? So, Karen, if you want to keep going off of your idea, or
yeah. So I love the idea of having a stronger student voice in this week and showing examples of student work, but also maybe having some youth actually participate. Or we've had some cross-generational thing where people have, like a parent is in the MOOC and their kid has done something or something, and I really like pulling out that student voice. I think I would be, I'm going to say this, and just feel free to just throw this out, because this is my kind of, Joe knows this is kind of a pet thing with me, but I would be explicit about crediting sources for images where they're not yours, and also directing people to sources. What is that? Something's ringing. Sorry, directing people to I think it was another Hangout, and I'm like, I don't have another Hangout. Anyway, directing people to sources for open license images, and there are some five picture story things that pull from open license stuff in Flickr, and I just think that whole thing about open license stuff is important, and credits are important, so I would be explicit about that. And then this is kind of a random thought, but it's something that when you were talking about doing this with different levels of technology, I was wondering if you've ever done it not with technology at all, like with magazines. I do a Kids Maker Day every fall, and I think I'm gonna do this with magazines. But I'm curious if you've done that and if it worked or what you think about that.
I haven't.
I haven't. I mean, we had kids drawing, which was really cool. It was very simple, and they liked it.
I'm kind of really excited about trying this because the constraints on my Kids Maker Day that I do is face-to-face, but there's no technology, and it's kids from like 3 to about 15, which is really challenging. But I bet all kids could pick 5 images and tell a story about it. And right. I think that would be really fun. So I'm excited about trying that.
And then how would you share that online? Would you like...
I wouldn't.
I mean, like, if you were going to share it with the rest of the community, would you, like, screenshot the images?
Well, I could have the kids, I mean, what I would do in the day is have the kids tell the story to the group with the images, like, on an easel. It's possible that I could video that and put them online, but the community I'm working with is a little, I'm not sure how that would work. I'd have to go through some hoops with people to get permissions and stuff.
Or you could just share it, like, you could share a reflection on your blog about what the experience was like with the kids.
Yeah, I've done that every year. Is just write it up, and then I try to put some pictures that don't have the kids in them, so that I don't have to do the permission. But yeah, I would definitely write up what I did and talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think people would want to know about it.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be really fun. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things I was thinking, I would piggyback on what Karen said. I think that the notion of exploring Creative Commons and licensing, it's a potential outcome where teachers, like when you were saying, Jack, there's a lot of people who would say, I'd never try that because I can't envision it working with kids. There's also, for some folks, it's just kind of like daunting knowledge gap of, are we citing this stuff right? So I would absolutely make sure that that could be part of the conversation, or that we're linking to a strong resource so they feel like they know how to do this right in terms of citation and Creative Commons. And I have in my notes that there was a gentleman who was planning to lead a Hangout. His name's Colin. And then he had something come up. He couldn't actually follow through on the Hangout. So he just might be somebody that I forwarded his contact info, because he might be willing to lead an ad hoc Hangout that ends up being that resource, or it's something you want to tackle. There's a lot of different ways we can sort of skin that cat, but I do think that that is an important issue to address, so folks feel like it's actionable and that they go back into their classrooms or their contexts empowered to put it to work.
And if you guys want any support on that, I would be more than happy to help provide resources or help with places to look for stuff. That's kind of my big thing.
That's something that I've always sort of said I needed to spend more time with in class. I mean, I do some, but not nearly enough, or maybe even correctly.
Yeah. The other thing I thought about was...
We're taking you up on this.
Yeah, good. I hope you should, because Karen is a powerful resource, and it's like hearing her voice on this would be awesome for the whole community. The other thing is, when you were talking about like what would be the way you would publish the final product, or that's a decision, you know, once you've got your 5 photos, there's some decision making. I think that is a cool... One of the things I thought about immediately was just like, you know, how do we give people sort of quick opportunities like Storify? Does Storify become something where you can take images that you've seen in the MOOC, etc.? The other thing I was thinking about is, I guess the caveat here is, I think your work at your writing project and the work you've done in the classrooms is in the foreground. And I think that one of the things about having, you know, new facilitators come in is that you don't have to have a sense of wrapping up the MOOC even though it's the last week. So with that caveat said, I would also think that one story that might be really accessible for everyone is tell the story of your learning in this MOOC via images. because then they can go back to any week that was powerful for them, and there's a lot of images, and they can remix and maybe use Creative Commons licensing to do that. It's the idea that, if you're going to give everyone the open-ended opportunity to tell a story, a lot of people would, draw blanks, whereas if you give a few story prompts and then you say, but you can leave all those prompts aside, I think you get a lot of stories quicker if we say something like, tell the story of your online learning, or tell the story of your summer, or tell the story of CL MOOC for you, etc., or tell the story of your networked interactions, or something like that. So just knowing that one story people might want to tell is the story of their learning. And then the other thing, I think the notion that we can put those images together and share. And so one of the ways I can participate this week is to take 5 pictures and say, have at it, community. I just posted them, and I just licensed them, so you don't even have to give me attribution. So tell a story using these images. Like, I think that would be awesome, because then you have the participant leadership. You have this different kind of interaction. Instead of them submitting five image stories to you, which you're not setting up a teacher-student relationship anyway, but instead of them doing something that approximates teacher-student, instead they're kind of challenging one another, or inviting one another to come check out my images or come play with my images. Or another thing they might do is say, hey, I'm gonna go through my Flickr at this time on Wednesday. If anyone wants to join for a hangout and we can do it all together, that'd be great. The opportunity to work with other people that they've already connected with to do this work. As a facilitator, I might just want to invite them and challenge them. Like, maybe even use those verbs, like, we invite you, we challenge you, because absent that, it might just not occur to them. So I think that's what I've got for facilitation ideas.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I like the idea of...
Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Sorry, just I like the idea of having a couple prompts, but then maybe do like a Google Doc where people could put in their own prompts. I bet you'd very quickly get like 200, tell a story of whatever.
Cool.
Yeah, and just for me, really fast, one thing that I noticed going through each of the make cycles so far is what I really appreciated was in that first newsletter, a link to one or two things where it was a very immediate way to get involved with whatever that make was. Whether it's, here's a tool that you can start with, or here's, here are 5 images that you could, something to help scaffold it for people to make it really easy to just enter in, and then from there maybe experiment a bit more. But I always thought having a very explicit in was helpful, especially for me going through to figure out and explore things a bit more. So
Wesley Fryer, that's it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I know.
Yeah.
Wesley Fryer. Yep.
That's a good one, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
That's when we started with him.
Yeah, he's great. I work with him a lot on the K-12 online stuff. It's fun.
Yeah, this is a really good one.
So I guess for our make cycle leaders, what did you hear from the coaching team that impacts your thinking entering into the make cycle?
Well, I'll say one thing. I think what Mallory said was important, that we need to scaffold it and have different levels of involvement for people coming in. Like, provide 5 images for those who are not really sure, and maybe give them some prompts, but then also opening it up to people who want to bring them. And I really like the idea of, if we can set up some kind of community or like a Flickr group that people can post their own images. Here's 5 images that you can use. I like that idea a lot.
Jack, Bonnie, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, we've done it so much in the past, I really didn't know how this was exactly going to work here. So I'm glad that you guys have all had enough experience with the process of this, like how this works, that we're not flying blind here. And, Jack and I just started throwing out some ideas of things that we felt really comfortable with that we thought were simple but also challenging. Like it's a simple idea, 5-image, but it's also when you start to try to do it, you know, like we as teachers, when we were working with his tech kids, we gave the assignment. But then both of us were challenged to also create our own, and you know, it was really hard. I mean, it was hard because the assignment was challenging, but also in our position, we wanted the images to sing. You know, mine were, I don't know, I never liked the first story I came up with, but just in passing, again, there's a simplicity to it, but it will be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think just to wait, I'm sorry, I don't want to start talking about the wrong thing. There are some examples of student work, and one of the questions that I had was sort of where we're bringing this in terms of like how close to the classroom. I think I have a clearer understanding around that because there's some student work that I love, and I love to talk about and share with people, and yeah, I feel like I've taken them apart so many times. In terms of the compositions that the kids did, and some of them are just so thoughtful. And I think when you really start to look at that level and how those images were composed, it's a powerful experience to sit down and look at how some of that's coming together, and the communication that's happening there. So.
And we also, Jack and I pushed the kids to use their own photos. I mean, some of them didn't, but that was always our push. Is for kids to bring, you know, have the ownership over the images that they took, because that became part of the process. Like,
yeah, that's something that
this year
when we sort of were, you know, we had the kids renegotiate rubrics and stuff like that this year, and that's something that kind of became codified in the rubric where they weren't able to score on the higher end unless it was like they tried to put percentages to it, but it just wasn't practical. But like a strong representation of work that was their own images in larger video pieces they were making. But we sort of used the 5-image story as a scaffold along the way to creating these larger videos. So we sort of teach it there and the visual composition part, and then it explodes when it gets to the larger videos that they make. But if that's something that they were pretty unanimous in terms of if it was all Google Images, they said that they felt that should not score highly. Something I think it's still communicating that idea works to kids and they understood it.
Great. Well, that's the end of the protocol, though, if anyone has any last things to add.
The only thing I'll add, because we usually end up with some warm, fuzzy kind of stuff, I just want to make sure that you know, because we really do appreciate you guys, you know, being game for this and knowing that there's a lot of unknowns at this point, so you know, we're just here to support you. But like, so here are some tangible things. The first thing we do when we get off is I invite you to the CL MOOC facilitators community with the understanding that you can totally ignore everything that goes on there. You don't have to track the conversation, etc. But if you ever feel like you need support right away, that's the great place to post because we'll check it all the time. So it's sort of like your red phone, right? You can always shoot an email to me too, but at the same time, you'll get that community invitation, but don't try to track the conversation unless you're just interested. But no requirement to do so. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is I will give you sample newsletters, but if you go to the homepage of CL MOOC, at this point, we've seen 4 newsletters, and so I have a rough template with examples for last year, but I'll make sure you have that because you probably want to start collaboratively drafting a newsletter, and that's right away. So, you know, but it's due next Friday. And what else? I guess that's it, except to say that if you ever have questions between now and then, let us know, and we're happy to have a conversation and dig into any ideas you have.
That's great. It was great.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
I think this is going to be really fun. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm going to say thank you, Mark, that you're joining in on this. I know you were really quiet, but I'm glad you're joining in on this.
I'm the listener. I'm the take it all in.
Yeah, now you're going to be a maker.
Right.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for coming, and thanks, Jack and Bonnie And thanks, Karen and Mallory, for joining and helping facilitate. And it's the last of our coaching meetings, and we're excited. So
great.
See how this all plays out.
It's so weird. I feel like we're coming in towards the end. I feel like I've just started. Like school just ended for me, right, Mark? Like 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're just like, I have a workshop Friday. Like I haven't even had my clear headspace yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So.
Right on. No, we're super excited. Anything you need, and thanks again for your time.
That's cool. All right.
Cool.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Right.